right, great. Hi, folks. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Welcome to our January combined site meeting. My name is Lawrence Su, one of your SEMA OE3 business agents. I'll turn it over to Zeb for further introductions.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Zeb Feldman, Senior OE3 SEMA business agent out of the San Jose office, and Adam.
Good afternoon, folks. Good to see everybody. Hope you all had a great holiday and a happy new year so far. Adam Cole, another one of your SEMA OE3 business reps.
And
Good
Jonathan, why
afternoon.
don't we go to you and then you can call on some of the board members.
Sounds good. Thanks, good afternoon, everyone. Jonathan Brown, one of your four OE3 SEMA business agents. Hope you've all had a good holiday season and welcome back. And I will turn it over to Dolores.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dolores Morales, and I'm honored to serve as your SEMA president.
Mary Beth.
Hey everybody, I'm Mary Beth Rogers. I am your SEMA secretary on the SEMA executive board, and I am so happy to be with you on this lonely Thursday after New Year's Day.
Well, we're not so lonely anymore. We have a good number of folks who are at this.
Actually, we are. It's rather amazing, isn't it?
We have a good number of folks who are here at today's meeting. We're going to have a pretty big agenda too as well. Let me just run over some of the quick items for those who can't see the chat right now. We're going to first start off with a thank you to VHP and DTAC. Then we'll go right into the Betty Young swearing-in ceremony that's coming up, as well as the PD event, Bye Bye Burnout. That will be also coming up for us that we're hosting. We'll also show you where the PD event past events are actually located at on the website, as well as the respective trainings. We also have some good information about the classification study application window notice, some information on the secured facility differential, as well as opportunities to participate in RMC Regional Medical Center member recruitment. Lastly, we'll close off with some county budget updates as far as the process, mid-year, what have you, and also a quick reminder on workout class opportunities. How do we approach it? How do we make sure that we are able to take advantage when those things do arise? Or if they don't arise, what's the actual mechanism to request of such? And of course, as always, any questions you might have, feel free to put in the chat, but we will also have a general Q&A section at the very end of the meeting. With that being said, I'm going to go turn over the first item over to our president, Dolores.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight that we had many departments, and many of you probably do a lot of volunteer work for our vulnerable community. But I wanted to highlight two departments that really that we knew did community service work. So this was the Department of Finance, DTAC, provided I think over 200 gifts for youth that are incarcerated that don't have anybody. They also, two of their members, actually their director, Sylvia and Elizabeth, came over and spent their entire day with our kids, sharing just wonderful stories and saying basically, you're not forgotten. There are people that care about you, and dressed up as Grinch. So the kids were really excited about that. And also VHP, several of the entire department came over to help wrap presents and also donated several gifts. So we just wanted to say thank you very much, not only to those departments and the individuals, but to all of you that spent time and energy in just making somebody's holiday season just better and brighter. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Dolores. Our next item I want to flag for folks, and we'll go ahead and put the flyer in the chat as well, is the upcoming swearing-in ceremony for our former SEMA member and now county supervisor, Betty Young. This will take place on January 10th. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for y'all to see. Here we are. So this is a event that's open to all folks, but especially we always encourage as much SEMA presence as we can, especially for our elected officials on the Board of Supervisors. But you'll see here that it's on January 10th on a Friday at 5 p.m., taking place at the Mexican Heritage Plaza. There's an agenda that I've also sent out through the SEMA Voice. So if you can't make it at 5, that's all right. The actual swearing in ceremony of it actually takes place at around 6 p.m. So if you could at least try to get there a little bit before 6, that'd be great. I know some folks might get off right at 5. But this is certainly something that we find as important to make sure that we show our presence. I don't believe there's been a date set for the other new county supervisor, Margaret Abekoga, but certainly when we have the information, we are going to be sharing that with interested members. Um, I'm not sure if any of our folks on the call like to say anything a little bit about Betty, but we made sure to support her all along the way for this campaign, her campaign for county supervisor, and her early appointment has also already shown that she really has the chops and the knowledge, institutional knowledge, to be the best county supervisor for District 2. 10 years of experience speaks a lot too as well, both on the Board of Supervisors staff as well as staff on the County Executive's Office. Zeb, Adam, Dolores, Mary Beth, anything you might want to add for our swearing in ceremonies, what have you, for Betty?
Yeah, just a reminder. When she worked in the CEO's office, she was I think she was a PM3, so she was a SEMA member, so former SEMA member on the Board of Supervisors is very exciting. She had a role working with the VASC, the Vietnamese American Service Center, and something we always talk about on our PAC committee, and with OE3 as well is it's great when you can educate politicians and local leaders about what your issues are. It's even better when you just elect people who have dealt with those same issues that you have, someone who understands the particular complexities and difficulties of being a middle manager working here in the county. So really looking forward to Betty coming in. Dolores, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to show up, not only to support Betty, but Betty was one of the first to reach out to SEMA to basically say, I want to meet with you, make sure that I understand your issues, and I'm a partner. And as things come forth that we need to meet with her, I think she welcomes it. So we would love to see our SEMA members show up to support Betty. And if you do show up, please wear your SEMA shirt. Make sure she knows that she is being supported by her fellow SEMA members. Thank you.
And how do people get SEMA shirts?
Why don't you tell us, Mary Beth?
Well, you contact your staff rep, Zeb, Adam, or Lawrence, and they can either get it out to you or deliver it to you.
If you're planning on being at the event and don't have a shirt, please just let us know and we'll bring one there for you. We're recently restocked, so we have sizes other than very small and very large again.
Also, I'd like to just comment on this, both to Betty and also to Margaret, the two victors in the most recent contest in November. One of the reasons that this is so important for SEMA, and you hear me say this all the time, and it applies to Jonathan as well and all of his units, it's our job to count to 3, right? You're in a very privileged position where you get to elect your boss, right? If you work at Apple, if you work at Cisco, if you work at whatever, Stanford, you don't get to elect your boss. We're in a circumstance where we get to elect our boss, and having 2 labor-friendly people elected, Margaret and Betty, and then having them willing to sit down, former SEMA member in Betty's case, willing to sit down with us, be the first, as Dolores mentioned, to reach out. That's wonderful, and it makes it that much easier for us to count to 3 on our whatever it might be, class studies, issues that might be escalated to the board, contracts, whatever it might be. It's so important in these times, especially when I say in these times, especially with SEMA's advocacy between contracts, we still have multiple and many issues that get escalated to the board other than just the labor agreement or contract that we have. So it's really important to have that support.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Our next item that I want to kind of flag for folks, and you've been seeing it through the SEMA Voices, and we'll continue to hound on this up until that event, is our upcoming professional development event, Bye Bye Burnout, which, yes, it is a play on the musical and movie as well, Bye Bye a Birdie. And this is something that's going to be happening at an in-person location at the Holiday Inn, starting at 8 a.m., ending at 12. This is a free event, but we still would like to have folks to RSVP as soon as they can so we have a really good head count. Our guest speaker is Dr. Tammy McCoy, or Bio. And here, this is something that we hope to have folks learn and be able to identify symptoms and signs of burnout. How do you combat those multiple domains and also explore those different ways to reduce burnout in the workplace? Certainly something that I think that folks might find helpful and a really great way to kind of start off the new year, especially when it comes to self-care. So absolutely check your SEMA Voice, RSVP if you haven't already. We're going to go ahead and drop the link into the chat. We also put a lot of our events on the SEMA website as well. So when you go on the SEMA website, it's going to be this button over here, Events Calendar. And you can see what are the meetings that are happening on a monthly basis, and also what are the events, whether it be a committee meeting, a site meeting. Hey, the site meeting that we're in right now, the combined site meeting today. And you already notice here that on February 4th, we have the Bye Bye Burnout, and you can also RSVP through here. In fact, the link that you're going to click on through the chat or through the actual SEMA Voice will bring you to this page, and you just can go ahead and respond with you're going, and we hope to see you there. Anything we might want to add for folks about this really exciting event that we're hosting?
Couple questions in chat, Lawrence. I can come up to you if you want. Gigi's asking if the event's going to be catered.
Can you say something about heavy hors d'oeuvres?
There's going to be heavy hors d'oeuvres and refreshments. Yes. But there is no fee for this one. In this case, it's a free event. But certainly, we still encourage folks to come by and also make the time for it if you could. A good question here is, are we allowed to attend during work hours? The answer is yes. Absolutely. This is something that professional development is something that we have continued to emphasize to the county, and it's a shared interest and agreement that professional development for our members is really paramount. And one of these events, as part of our contract, professional development events is something that the county also supports both financially and organizationally when it comes to bringing out people. So absolutely, our members can come out whenever they can during work hours. And I put the link into the chat as well.
And just this goes without saying for most folks, you'll be aware of this, but as salaried employees, you can of course attend on your work time. You are responsible for your own schedules though, so you need to make any accommodations to make sure it's clear where you are and that any responsibilities you have will be covered.
Thank you. Now, what about those events that we might have missed or events that were in the past? I actually want to show you a little something too as well on the SEMA website. That's going to be our next agenda item. Where do all these SEMA trainings and events kind of go back to? Where can I find them? If you go back to the SEMA website, under committees, we have a lot of committees here, but you're going to look specifically for the Professional Development Committee. And under this locked page, and I say locked page because you have to log in. As a dues paying member, you can request to get your account activated. I know a number of you on the call already have your account activated. So once you log in, you're going to be able to access this page. And this is one of the benefits where you can access all the previous, at least continue to be updated. There's some that were in previous years where we don't have the information for, but especially when we have it recorded on Zoom or online, you would actually find the links there. And some of them are actually in-person events. So for an example, when you have something like, What's the Tea from Jeff Smith, we actually don't have, excuse me, we don't actually have like a particular recording of the whole thing, but in this sense, we actually have like, for example, his speech, right? You get the good parts of it, both from him, James Williams, and Greta. We have some other things that maybe there wasn't recording, but we actually have a Facebook post or some pictures that you can kind of revisit. And that would take you directly to, for example, the pictures that were taken at that event that day. And something that was a really hot event was what to expect when you're expecting an EO investigation, right? And that would bring you directly to a YouTube link where it was a recording for that particular training. We had a good number of people show up to that one. Adam, Zeb, what was the count, if you might recall?
More than 300.
More than 300. So if you weren't part of that 300, this is one of the ways that you can access those trainings. Again, it's through the committees tab, all the way to Professional Development Committee. You'll be able to access it through there. All right. Our next item, yet another exciting item. We only have exciting items, by the way, folks, is the classification study application window notice. And that's
You
something
can't say that in a deadpan way, Lauren. You have to have some oomph. We only have exciting items in this agenda.
that's
A little bit of pizzazz.
something that we're gonna open the window on. This one is the classification study window, and that's something that Adam's gonna take us away on. So Adam, tell us in the most exciting manner about a little bit about classification studies.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. So folks will have seen it went out last month in a SEMA e-blast. A little bit of the walkthrough of the process and the forms for the classification study window for this year. So to encourage folks, if you're interested in applying, to look at that. I'll do just a quick run through and reminder for it on what that is, and I'm already getting some questions here in chat, so I'll tackle those as well. Just a quick reminder. It's easier for us if you if the question's not about a specific issue pertaining to you that you want to message directly. It's always easier if you put it in the general chat as opposed to message it directly to one of us. So for our classification study window, as a reminder, the first step of that process is in January. We ask all members interested in applying to download the PCQ and fill it out as your application and send it to the SEMA Classification Committee. In February, we'll be reviewing those and then giving you feedback on the application. And then in March, we'll be putting a little over 20 of those forward to HR and ESA for study this year. There's a couple things that are different about the class study window for this year. The first one is that we have compaction language in the contract now for the first time. That is a hard limit or a hard number for compaction, which is 10%. So we are particularly looking for folks to submit compaction studies. There were a handful of classifications for folks who submitted, during the negotiations process, where we put a call out at that time to say, hey, if you're compacted, let us know so we can try and negotiate through a realignment for you. In some cases, we weren't able to fully cure those compaction issues during the negotiations process. Immediately jumping to mind, for example, is our biomed supervisor over at the hospital was just super compacted, making less than his highest paid subordinate. We were able to do something during negotiations, but there will still be a substantial ability for a compaction adjustment. So compaction means you're making less than 10% more in base pay for the same step compared to your highest paid subordinate whose job you can also do. So if that's you or any of your peers, please put in. We, as of right now, only have the
Hey,
compaction
Adam,
language.
sorry to interrupt. I want to clarify. When he says you can also do, mean that your classification requires you to. It's not that you can do their job. It's that you must be able to as a component of your employment.
Yeah, so the example we use here a lot is if you're a clinic manager, you might have physicians that report up to you, and your role is being over the entire clinic for a primary care clinic, but you're not going to be compacted with the physicians who might report up to you for administrative purposes. So that'd be an example of where compaction doesn't apply. Yeah, so like I was saying, we only have the compaction language in the contract for 3 years right now. The county was unwilling to negotiate it in there permanently. They think it's just going to be a massive impact on the budget to fix these compaction issues. We don't think it'll be, a massive impact on the budget. We think it'll be moderate. And so we're definitely encouraging everyone who has a compaction issue to put in, so we can get all folks who need a compaction adjustment in this year, next year, and in the year after. If you have any questions about compaction or any of the nuances, you're definitely welcome to reach out to myself or Lawrence or Zeb. They're up in your area, and we're happy to talk you through it. The classification study process, of course, is also still open for folks who, think they're doing work outside their individual classifications. So, you're a management analyst, but you think you should be a program manager based on the size and scope of your responsibilities. You're not doing analytical work, you're managing a whole program, right? An opportunity for you to put in. Something that we've been flagging the last couple of years and continues to hold true. The majority of the applications that we get, I would say, are probably from departments that would be on this site meeting. And it's a lot of folks who, put in for the senior level in their classification or a PM1 to a PM2, for example. those continue to be very difficult classification studies to get through. For all the, I think, number of, IT series classifications that we put in last year, with similar class study requests, we've gotten probably two that have come back with a positive result so far this year. So just bear in mind those are difficult. And included in the e-blast that went out, there's one of our SEMA YouTube trainings that's still hosted up there. If you're interested in just kind of hearing a little bit about what makes an effective classification study in a good case, I'd encourage you to go watch that. It's a little over an hour long, and you can review that there. Let me take some of the questions that I'm getting in chat here. The first one is, if I have submitted previously, can I resubmit? Or if I've already been studied, can I resubmit? So we tried to get this changed in our negotiations and fought this down to like the last day, but didn't get there. So there remains a 1-year ban on resubmitting, or submitting if you've just been studied. So you have to have a 1-year delay before you submit a new classification study request. That remains one of the reasons we ask folks to submit classification studies to SEMA first, so we don't just have 200 people put in and then 180 are going to be, barred for the next year from submitting just because we can't approve all of them. Another question here: if you were successfully reclassified, is there a delay on you resubmitting for a new study? There's not a delay, but there would need to be a really good reason to resubmit. So something substantial should have changed with your underlying job since you were reclassified. Otherwise, HR will have that perspective of, well, we just looked at you and made this determination that this is your appropriate classification. So why would we just redo that work we just did? And the answer would need to be, well, 2 of my coworkers resigned and their positions got deleted and I absorbed their work, right? Like that could be a very good reason why you would need another look. So if you've just been reclassified, you should, note that in your application and then clearly articulate, here's what's changed between when I was reclassified and now. And it should be something that changed in the underlying work that you do. A question here from Jim in chat, asking, how do we handle the RMC reclass requests? So there's a couple things that'll be coming up regardless for folks to have reclassification reviews in the coming months. The first one before I get to RMC will be anyone who, this is mostly going to be folks who work in health and hospital, but if you are required to have a license for your generically titled job, so for example, you're a program manager, but we need you to have an LCSW or LMFT or be an RN or something like that, you'll be entitled to a classification study this year to look at creating a new classification or putting a differential in place, or however that looks to be resolved. So if that's you won't need to submit during this window for a classification study because you will already be studied. The second one is for folks who are doing what we call enterprise level work for the hospital. So this is something we've been back and forth talking to the CEO, James Williams, and Anita, the head of HR, for going on 5 or 6 months now. And we have an agreement to a general structure for how we're going to be reviewing folks, but not all the fine details tuned out yet. So what we're particularly going to be trying to address with the acquisition is 2 things. One, and not relevant for anybody here on the call, how do we make sure that your future SEMA colleagues who get hired in by the county are appropriately in the right titles, once they come on board to the county. So we'll have a process for that. Relevant for folks here is we're going to piggyback that process to also put through those of you that are in the same job titles as you were prior to the acquisition of O'Connor or St. Louis, but have taken on enterprise level work first with O'Connor and St. Louis and now with Regional Medical Center. So Jim, for example, is a great example of someone like this who's in the same job title he was when he was over 1 hospital compared to when he's going to have responsibilities spanning 4 hospitals now and be enterprise level. The county's putting through a lot of updated classifications to, complete that transition to enterprise. At a high level, I'd say maybe 3/4 of departments at the hospital have made that transition and now have enterprise level titles, but they committed to doing that after the first acquisition of O'Connor and St. Louis and still haven't finished it. So we want to see it completed now as part of this acquisition. So we'll have a process. We're not sure yet whether it's going to fall pre-acquisition, so kind of March, or post-acquisition, think April for the review. Given the numbers and volumes of folks we're going to have to go through there, but there will be more info to come for those of you who are in that kind of enterprise level category that need to be reviewed for an updated classification title. And a question from Kelly and Melissa here about updates on 2024 studies. We still have a few months left, at least in the deadline for studies that were submitted in 2024. We've started to see those come back. So when we get yours back, we will, send it your way to review. We just had, I think, two positive ones that came back last week. We had a successful IT classification reclass, and our EVS manager title came back with a positive salary study. So we're seeing some good results, but the deadline's still a little ways away. And then for our EO salary, that's a 2023 submission that we're still meeting and conferring with. And we have not heard back from HR since our last meeting. We had, contesting their findings going back a couple months. But we continue to raise it at our monthly meetings with HR and say that we're still awaiting their next response back. Let me scroll through some more questions. Would enterprise-wide for RMC include procurement? It's not department specific. It's going to depend upon your job title and what your responsibilities are. So it very well could include procurement, but might not necessarily. A kind of helpful way to think about this is it should be work that you absorb that's not just resolved by theoretically hiring more staff, right? If the department's just understaffed, HR will often say, you're doing a lot of work for a strategic sourcing officer, but you're not doing kind of what we would consider senior strategic sourcing level work, which might be, more complex assignments, certain budget dollar amounts, what have you, right? So kind of whether that justifies a change to a higher level title will depend on your specific series and what the line breaks are between the various titles. A question here. I asked DSA when the 2025 reclassification window opens, and they said it was March. Yeah, so like I explained, Eric, we ask folks to submit to our SEMA classification committee first in January so that we can give you feedback and learn about the application that you're putting forward for a couple of reasons. One, if you don't do that, when we meet with ESA to review applications, it's difficult for us to advocate for one that we haven't seen first. And then second reason, like I said, there's a ban on resubmitting in successive years. So we try to control the number of folks who submit to ESA so that it's not a, three stooges trying to get through the door issue. Because if we have 200 people submit to ESA, maybe, 100 more of those would have been great studies to go through. But you're just automatically banned because the ESA refuses to budge on the 1-year ban on restudying an application. So we try to, meter folks to go through at an appropriate pace so we don't have people getting inappropriately blocked out for a year. Then so we can give you feedback as well. So the window is January. We ask you to give it to SEMA. February, you'll get feedback and we'll work with you on improving the application. And then March, we give them to HR for this year's window. The deadline, Melissa, for the EOD study is already passed. But they've given us the study. Now we're meeting and conferring over it. So there's no additional contractual hard deadlines there. And then the private question, is fully remote consideration for a reclassification study? If I have colleagues that are fully remote, how I'd like to qualify for that process. It's not part of the consideration, whether you are remote or not is part of the classification study. Okay. Lawrence, do you have any additional updates on the procurement classification study? No? Okay. So we've had a number of meetings with your procurement leadership and with HR about this, and it continues to be going back and forth at that level. So we haven't received anything on SEMA's side, but we've made our stance clear to the county on this. I know last time I met with Lawrence and Matthew Hata and HR about this. Whatever the study says, we just want to see it at this point. So that continues to be our stance to HR, and we've not yet received it, so they're not moving it forward, at least as of right now. And I think I got to the questions there. How much longer do we have to wait for a response after meeting and conferring? Generally, we'll hear back within a few months. You know, if there's a change to the classification study as a result of our meeting and confer, that takes a few months to go back through the review process before it comes to us. So it's not necessarily a bad sign if we met and conferred and we're waiting. If it has to go back through a re-review and then be approved before it gets sent to us. So there's unfortunately no deadline on the process once we start meeting and conferring. Okay. I think we got all the questions there, Lawrence. So I'll pass it back to you for, actually, do you mind if I start off with the secured facility differential?
Yeah, go.
That's
Yeah.
I want to make a couple other comments on this before we leave this topic. And this intersects a little bit with Jonathan's area down in Monterey, that contract which we just concluded. So we're always looking at enhancements to our contract language. And Adam, you'll recall when we first negotiated the timelines 5 years ago, that was an enhancement because we had no timelines. So now we have 1 year. Now an enhancement that we just negotiated down in Monterey is that there will be a third-party paid review of the class studies that come back. So the county and the union, if we disagree on any studies, we have a fixed, not any, we have a fixed number. I believe the number is 10. Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong. 10 studies that up to 10 that we can appeal to a third party to look at. Could think about it like an arbitrator or a mediator is a better term because they don't make a binding arbitration. And they make a professional assessment after interviewing both parties with classification study expertise. And then as a third party expert, they say, we find the union's arguments compelling on this portion of the class study. We find the county's arguments compelling on this portion. We don't believe it's a data analyst. We believe it's a senior data analyst, and we think that it should be paid at this level. And then it's an official recommendation. So we're always looking for those new rungs on the ladder so that we can get enhancements in one of our contracts that then we have some bargaining and negotiation and real world experience with, that then we can matriculate into another contract. So anything else you wanted to add on that, Jonathan?
No, I mean you summed it up pretty well there, Zeb. It is 7 studies that we can refer to the
Thank you.
third party arbitrator, though.
I gave
So
us an extra 3. I'm thinking ahead.
yes, yeah, that's all though. You summed up the rest of it.
And we do this across. So like one of the reasons we got the merit service pay is because we got longevity pay down in Monterey. One of the reasons Monterey got on-call pay is because we got that in the county, years ago. So it's that rung approach that's really benefiting us. But yeah, I think you wanted to tackle the next one, Adam.
Yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about the secured facility differential or locked facility differential. This is a new piece of contract language that came into the SEMA MOU in these last negotiations. And I'll go ahead actually and share my screen real quick if I can, Lawrence, so I can show folks the language. So what you're seeing here is the SEMA recommends version of the MOU. I always recommend folks for the future be looking at, this section on SEMA's website. When you pull it up, this is also the printed version that you have, and it has these kind of helpful language at the bottom here, which is just our advice to you on the language. So this differential is starts effective this pay period. And unfortunately, what it sounds like is most departments have not yet vetted and approved folks for this differential. Secondarily, we're getting a whole lot of denials as folks put in. And what we're hearing back from individual departments where it might be our managers who have put in for their employees who are also in SEMA to get approved for this differential is so-and-so in labor relations told me this did not apply to them. For some reason, that turns out to be erroneous. And then we're having to jump in and get it corrected in each case. And we're hearing, I would say, very different reasons for denials too. Most recently, for example, out of the Department of Corrections, we heard the response back from Labor Relations was, well, you're not in a safety job title, so this differential doesn't apply to you, which is just the complete opposite of what the language says. The language says if you're in a safety job title, this differential is not for you. It's specifically for those of you who are not in a safety job title. So as a reminder, who this applies to, this is if you're in a generically titled job, you're a program manager, you're a mental health program specialist, you're clerical supervisor, whatever, right? If you have to go into main jail, Elmwood, the Hall, the Ranch, BAP, EPS, as part of your job for your regular duties. So not that you're assigned to a project, for example. So, I'm going to pick on Jim again because he's here on the call. Jim might occasionally need to go work in BAP or EPS when there's an issue with their telecom system, but probably not a regular part of his duties. It's, as a need may arise, he might need to go in there for some reason, but it's not going to be part of his core function and core assignment. But if it is for you, this differential applies to you. And for a lot of you, it'll be, come out to about a 4 or 5% differential per year. It's a flat dollar amount, 225 per pay period. But it's not going to be automatically turned on. You need to raise your hand. You need to say this differential applies to me and have your manager put in a request to the HR Service Center to turn this on. And if you get any pushback, please reach out to myself or Lawrence or Zeb. I think so far in each case, we've been successfully adjudicating these and getting it turned on for folks. But so far, everybody I've heard from who had this on their radar to apply for it has been denied upon first request. So it seems like a deny first and then check later if somebody complains seems to be kind of the standing order right now, which is a little frustrating. But we'll just need to make sure that you reach out to SEMA and we get it fixed for you. Anything you want to add there, Lawrence, for your areas?
I think the only thing I would mention as well is that where Adam kind of pointed out where the SEMA recommends is, it is under the Santa Clara County tab, and that's where you can kind of get to that actual contract language. Always reference it back as well. By the way, we also have printed copies, so if you like a hard copy, that's going to be found at our SEMA office. They can pick a good copy up. And at the end of the day, if you ever have any questions about our contract or any of the SEMA benefits, not to say, don't necessarily trust what the county is telling you, but it's probably also good to reach out to your rep because we are also the ones that help interpret and negotiate this contract as well as enforce it at the end of the day too. So, okie doke. Thank you for that, Adam. We're gonna continue to turn it back to you on the next item, which is the RMC member recruitment, RMC acquisition, and what's going to be in store for us in 2025.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. So some quick news, I guess, for everybody is that the acquisition date has been pushed back again for RMC, so far just to April 1st, but now it's in Q2. I don't know that we're going to see that slip any further. I know they were working frantically to try to get the purchase agreement signed before the new year, with that date locked in. But for now, the date's pushed to April 1st. For the acquisition. And we've got a plan now to get in front of folks at RMC for our incoming SEMA members. So what we're going to see is there'll be new employee orientations, 2 cohorts every day for the month of February. So they'll be pulling folks in for a 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then there will be a lunch for break. Then we'll be doing a second cohort in the afternoon. We're going to be able to get the first cohort at noon, have them stay a little late, and the second cohort to come a little early. So we're going to have an hour from noon to 1 p.m. or so every single day in February to get in front of our new coworkers over there. So myself and Lawrence and Zeb we'll be there introducing folks to SEMA and answering questions, giving them kind of the general new employee orientation for the SEMA unit. However, we're happy to take more SEMA folks, particularly those of you that came over in the acquisition with O'Connor in St. Louis. Might be a handful of you on here. But if you have any interest in joining us to meet some of your new SEMA colleagues and help answer questions about what it's like to work for the county, anything you wish you knew when you first got hired in, or came to work from a private institution like RMC used to be, we'd love to have you there. So again, those will be at the RMC hospital at noon every day in February. So if you have interest, feel free to just reach out to myself or Lawrence or Zeb, and we'll be happy to get you slotted in and join us. I've not heard that the purchase agreement has been signed. I last talked to VMC executives the last week of 2024, and it had not been yet, but they were working straight through the holiday trying to get it signed before the first. Does anybody have more up-to-date info on that than I do?
Well, I can tell you it hasn't been signed. I don't know. I'm sure Jim Piazza knows even more. I'll let him speak.
Yeah, as of this morning, it has not been signed. It is in progress. They're still shooting, as you said, for the first, and they're talking. There's been discussions about onboarding, all that wonderful stuff, but it's still pending other issues. So more to come, I'm sure.
Also, while we're on the topic of RMC, I want to just alert people. I realize this is the combined site meeting, but I do see several TSS members on the call, including you, Jim. People who are on, who saw Khalid Turk's vacation blackout notice, that message has been recalled, and the CIO will be issuing new instructions about the vacation blackout. So please disregard the message from Mr. Turk that you probably saw come through earlier today.
Nothing else in arms here, no, Lawrence?
Good deal. You still have the mic for the next particular item before it's passed on to me. We're going to talk about the county budget updates.
Sure. So for those of you keeping track at home, your DFOs, Department Fiscal Officers, should be frantically working probably late. I think it's either due today or tomorrow, but numbers for the mid-year budget review are due this week. We'd been tracking for a number of departments. We were a little bit concerned about what the mid-year budget review could end up holding for some of our departments. Normally in good financial years, the mid-year budget review is kind of the halfway point through the year, where if your department has been overrunning your budget or there's new unexpected costs, it was an opportunity for departments to go back and request more money and more positions from the board partway through the year. I know, for example, the sheriff has some position requests they're putting forward at the mid-year. However, that cuts both ways. In down economic years, it's an opportunity for the county to say, hey, revenues are not meeting expectations, what we committed to for the year. We have to look at making some cuts at the mid-year. That normally comes up for departments that promised some increase in revenue. If that revenue is not being actualized, then OBA has in the past said, hey, those cuts that we deferred because you promised new revenues, we're going to make those cuts now. We're not anticipating that for any of those departments where that was an option. Behavioral health, for example, didn't cut many positions at all in the last go around, despite their huge budget cut, promising new revenues. And it sounds like they'll get through the mid-year budget review fine, as will the hospital. So we'll start to see the numbers next month though, and see exactly what that's going to look like. Now we're in January, later this month, as that rolls forward. Oh, thanks, Stefan. So mid-year requests are due tomorrow. Okay. However, we're going to be turning our attention toward next fiscal year with fairly short order once the mid-year process is done. And what we continue to hear from departments is that they're being asked for 1.5% of their budget, not necessarily 1.5% of their general fund allocations, 1.5% of the budget cut for next fiscal year. So we will be reseating SEMA's budget review committee. This was the same group that sat last year that produced some good work that helped us fight over a number of the positions in custody health the board was trying to cut, identify some alternatives for budget cuts at that time, and ended up saving some positions and made sure that we found positions everywhere for the handful of SEMA positions that were cut. So we'll be turning our attention once the mid-year passes, hopefully without too much fanfare, towards the next fiscal year. If you're interested in being involved in the budget review committee, we're particularly interested in folks that have kind of a good vantage point in their department with some overview of the budget. So those of you that are in, ASM2 roles, ASM1, DFO, some departments, your senior program managers, you'd be a great asset. So you're welcome to reach out to your rep and we'll get you get you included as that group spins back up in March.
Great. Thank you, Adam. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for our last item before we get to general Q&A is work out of class. So how do we find this, first of all? As always, see my website. I'm going to go to Santa Clara, and we have two tabs. We have the MOA, which is how it is actually agreed upon and signed, and we have a SEMA recommends version. And so, for example, you see here's how it looks cleanly, and then for SEMA recommends, we actually have the notes that are under here. Work out of class is something that hopefully is familiar to most members, but for folks who don't know, work out of class is that mechanism where when a position goes vacant or temporarily vacant, so we actually have distinctions now where the language is improved and clarified, where we put those two different sections. And you'll see that the first section is work out of class to fill a temporary absence, and there was work out of class to occupy an unfilled vacancy. In other words, there's no one in that particular position that is vacant. So here, what we're trying to emphasize to folks is that this language has been oftentimes, I'll say, applied kind of weirdly across the county in my experience. And we have been doing our due diligence to ensure that departments are adhering to the new language and new improved language that we have from our SEMA contract. Something what's notable too, it's the fact that retro pay is certainly something that when it is done without compensation, you're actually assigned work out of class duties, definitely reach out to us. That has happened recently with some of my folks, and I would just want to bring that out to individuals where if you are feeling that, not feeling, if you are being assigned that work but not getting that pay, or if there's actually an opportunity available but isn't made available to you, let's make sure we have a conversation about it. Although there's no obligation in terms of making sure that everyone gets that same opportunity, it's not a competitive process, and we actually write language about this here. We can still definitely weigh in to say that, look, we want to make sure we rotate, especially when there are maybe, let's just say 8, 10 people who are eligible for work out of class position. And reason why it's so valuable, and I think that there's a shared interest aside from just the money, although I started off with just talking about the money, is also the ability to learn the skills, be able to have handled the responsibilities and duties of that higher level position. That may ensure further professional development and also career advancement too. So definitely emphasis on our Article 12 work out of class language, and try to see, is that something that you could kind of apply in your workplace? Is this something that you've actually observed? And is this also something that you might need help? It's being the dues paying members that we're also here to be your best advocate. And we want to make sure that everyone excels at their time at the county, not just in their current position, but also in future positions when opportunities arise. All right. Any questions on work out of class? Again, just flagging it because of some of the recent things I've been observing in my route, and something that I think that we've also made as one of our items that we negotiated on in this most recent contract, and hopefully this is something that we've delivered in a very good fashion. Okie doke. That being said, let's go right into general Q&A. Any questions that we might have missed, or any questions that have not been addressed throughout our agenda today? How's 2025 feeling for everyone? It's going to be great, isn't it? It's going to be a nice year. What is it? For me, I think this is going on my 3rd year. I'm loving my time here. And hopefully you're loving your time at the county, and make sure that at the end of the day, your union is your family. And so we're happy to have been of service for you for the past couple of years. My service for you the past couple of years, Zeb, Adam, Jim, Dolores, Jonathan, and we want to continue working with you and for you. Whenever there's any opportunities to be involved, please stay involved. We're seeing you at the Betty Young swearing in ceremony, whether it be at the PD events with Bye Bye Burnout. We really hope to see you there, and as well as growing our family through the Regional Medical Center acquisition. We really rely on members just like you to be able to stay active, stay involved. And if anyone who ever, whether you're too busy or actually have quite a bit of time, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us. We make ourselves as accessible as possible. And we hope to see you again next month at February's combined site meeting. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Bye, everyone.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Lawrence,
Happy New
everyone.
Year.